touching call. Desperate student discovers hidden truths after Mafia boss's daughter is kidnapped. Ethan scrubbed the dishware under the relentless stream of scalding water, the greasy remnants of last night's dinner serving as a stark reminder of his reality. The clatter of plates and the greasy scents of the diner melded into a chaotic symphony, an unwelcome backdrop to his aspirations. A scholarship student at a prestigious university, he often felt like a ghost among the affluence that permeated the campus. His classmates moved through their lives with an ease he could only envy, their laughter echoing in the distance, while he was stuck grinding away amidst endless stacks of books and grueling shifts. Tonight, as the sun set beyond the diner's flickering neon lights, an echo of melancholy washed over him. With dreams of becoming a lawyer tainted by shadows of inadequacy and frustration, he often questioned if he truly belonged. Then the phone rang, a jarring juxtaposition that pulled him from his thoughts. "Mia," a voice pleaded, trembling with urgency. The name sent electricity through him, the daughter of the most notorious Mafia boss haunting his nightmares. But it was her fear that rattled him. It was like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "Help. They took me." The desperation seeped into every syllable, igniting instincts deep within him. His heart raced, breath hitching as her words spiraled into chaos. Would he plunge headfirst into an abyss to rescue her? He struggled against the tide of possibility. The very idea terrified him. But as her sobs echoed in his ear, every fiber of his being urged him to act. His thoughts, usually so organized and meticulous for classes, spiraled into a vortex of conflicting emotions. Was he truly up to the task? Why her? Why now? The tensions of his own family history clawed at him, a past marred by his estranged father's battles with the same criminal organization Mia now belonged to. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The tension surged within him, unyielding. He was deeply aware he was standing at a precipice, the weight of his father's legacy pulling him down. Anger festered, coursing through his veins alongside compassion for Mia. Would this choice lead to vengeance or the forgiveness he yearned to offer? The avenue spun before him. Save her and forsake his dreams of justice, or uphold an ideal that could sever his chance at real connection? Time flashed by, uncertainty gnawing at him.
What awaited him on the other side of this decision? A fate similar to his father's, or a chance for redemption? Each moment felt like a pendulum swinging above the depths of his own turmoil. As Ethan's mind raced, an unforeseen truth began to surface from the chaos, known conflict. Could he really navigate this sinister world without losing himself? The line between right and wrong blurred further with each passing instant, leaving him breathless as he realized the truth. The real battle wasn't merely for Mia's freedom, it was for his very soul. Ethan's feet pounded against the pavement, his breath heavy with uncertainty as the city loomed around him like a predator stalking its prey. Each corner turned brought fresh waves of anxiety, propelling him further into the unknown. He wasn't just running to save Mia, he was also fleeing from the shadows of his own past, from the whispers of inadequacy that crept deeper into his psyche with every step. The streets became a labyrinth, and for every heartbeat echoing in his ears, reminders of his own insignificance screamed louder. A scholarship student from a modest background, he had built his identity around study and sacrifice. Now, as he ventured into a world defined by power and wealth, he felt like a fragile paper boat navigating a stormy sea. Would his books and idealistic teachings prepare him for this? He halted at an intersection, scanning the sidewalk for any signs of danger. The streetlights flickered, as if unsure they should illuminate such chaos. The thought of Mia, lost, frightened, surrounded by darkness, rekindled his determination. She was more than just the daughter of a mafia boss. She became a symbol of a struggle he was never ready to face, a vibrant echo of potential trapped within a gilded cage. But what could he really offer? The innate legal knowledge he had acquired felt insignificant against the brutality of the world he was stepping into. His hands tightened around his backpack,
The weight of law books accrued comfort against anxiety. In that moment he realized he had been preparing not just for courtrooms and legal briefs, but for a battle of morals, searching for justice amid turmoil. A flash of movement caught his eye. A group of men across the street exchanged hurried whispers, glancing in his direction. Ethan's heart jumped. Here was the intersection of instinct and intellect. The training he received through mock trials began to flood back. He had learned to gather information and evaluate it. And as the fear coiled within him, a clear strategy started to take shape. He recalled a phrase from a lecture, "Knowledge is power." So what knowledge did he have to wield?
The rumors surrounding Mia's family tangled through his mind. He had overheard conversations amongst his classmates, snippets of stories here and there that hinted at vulnerabilities within the organization. Just as fear was burrowing itself into his thoughts, determination ignited. Ethan ducked into a nearby alley, heart hammering, strategizing as he moved toward a small cafe he frequented near the university. He needed to connect the dots. The more he armed himself with information, the better chance he had to dismantle the fear that tangled around his will to act. Inside the cafe, the flickering bulb overhead buzzed to life as he approached the familiar barista. "I need your help," he blurted, desperation threading through his voice. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern crossing her features. "Mia." The name hung between them, laden with urgency. He filled her in, skirting the edges of the truth, weaving connections that lay hidden beneath surface-level gossip. With each piece of information he gathered, Ethan felt a shard of confidence puncture the familiar cloak of self-doubt. But he was quickly reminded that information could be a double-edged sword, a weapon, or a burden, depending on how one wielded it. A growl of uncertainty gripped him as he considered his moving pawns in this dangerous game. What if his pursuit of justice only deepened the divide? Time pressed upon him again, as Mia's sobs returned to echo in his mind. The stakes were higher than ever. The moment had come to face not just the darkness of the world around him, but the shadows within. Each choice felt decisive, yet with each revelation, he discovered an unsettling truth. Becoming a hero could demand a price he was not ready to pay. As he stepped out of the cafe, intrepid once more, the city draped over him like a woolen cloak, tough, heavy, but shielding him from the starkness of reality. He was edging closer, but would his heart and mind remain aligned under the weight of his mission? The path to Mia unwound before him, twisted and uncertain, with shadows looming from every corner. It was then he began to grasp exactly how deep the stakes ran, not just for Mia, but for himself as well. He could feel it tightening around him, the threads of fate binding them together. Ethan straightened, and for the first time a flicker of resolve ignited within him. But as he prepared to confront the stark realities ahead, he felt an uncanny twist. What if he already played a role more significant than he realized? With that lingering thought, he knew one truth. The time had come to face his family's legacy, and what awaited him beyond the threshold was no longer a shadow. It was his destiny. Ethan felt the adrenaline coursing through him, the determination that had bubbled to the surface, mingling with an underlying fear he couldn't shake. The world outside blurred in his vision, vibrant colors morphing into a monochromatic rush as he took steadying breaths.
He didn't need to drown in the weight of this mission. He needed clarity. Knowledge gained from books warped into practical wisdom that begged to be tested. Retracing his steps, he recalled the whispers of vulnerability connected to Mia's family. There had been a rumor of a weak link, a disgruntled associate on the verge of betrayal. That name swirled in his mind like a mantra of hope, urging him to take action. If he could identify this person, he might garner enough information to sway the tide in Mia's favor. He needed to shift from passive observer to decisive participant. His mind raced as he formulated a plan. Approach the school, their shared academic sanctuary, as this was his best vantage point. The campus was brimming with institutions, connections, and a network of young minds. Surely someone would have insight. As he walked, he squared his shoulders. The weight of his backpack felt different now. It was a vessel of knowledge, not just a burden of textbooks. Each step felt like a reconciliation with his identity, the scholarship student transforming into an agent of change. Inside the university library, he moved through the aisles with purpose, scanning for familiar faces. Students sat hunched over their studies, unaware of the turmoil swirling outside their academic bubble. He approached a study group huddled around a table, casual conversations punctuating their discussion. He recognized Hannah, a fellow student with connections to the business department, who often overheard hushed exchanges about the darker side of society. "Hannah, can I ask for a moment?" he said, his voice a controlled whisper. She looked up, surprise flashing in her eyes. "Sure, Ethan, what's going on?" He leaned closer, heart pounding fiercely. "It's about Mia. I need to talk about her father's organization." Her brow furrowed, concerns pooling in her gaze, but curiosity anchored her to the moment. Ethan shared everything he could without implicating himself or revealing too much, clutching at the fragments of information that mattered. "The man I heard something about, Morris," Hannah said, chewing the tip of her pen. "He recently had a fallout. Something to do with money and a shipment that went missing. He could be looking for an out, or even revenge." Ethan's heart surged. "Where can I find him?" "That's risky territory." Her voice dropped, apprehension lacing her words. "He spends time at Carmine's pub, but be cautious. People like him, they're unpredictable." Cautious. That was a word that echoed ominously in his mind. Could he afford to play this hand? But the urgency of Mia's plight eclipsed all hesitation. Each minute that slipped away tightened the noose around her fate. As he stepped out of the library, the world outside felt charged with potential. Precision mattered now. He had to navigate this dangerous landscape without losing his integrity.
Every decision would hold implications, and he wasn't entirely sure of his moral compass in these uncharted waters. Was he truly prepared to face the ethical ramifications that his pursuit for Mia entailed? Emerging into the bustling street, the shadows seemed more pronounced, whispering doubts and warnings. Ethan inhaled deeply. Determination flooded the air around him. His pace quickened, a signal of transition from fear to accountability. Soon he would confront Morris, seeking not only information, but answers to his own inadequacies. Would he step into a realm overrun with darkness, or could he illuminate a path forward for both Mia and himself? As he approached Carmine's pub, he felt the weight of every choice he had made coalescing into a moment of truth. Beyond the threshold, dangers lurked, but so did clarity. Everything hinged on what he would unleash within those walls, and what he would discover about the man he was becoming. The door creaked slightly as he pushed it open, the sound echoing in his mind. Inside, the din of laughter and conversation swallowed him. This place felt alive and imposing, a microcosm of the chaos he was plunging into. But as he surveyed the room, a thought struck him like lightning, cutting through the noise. Was he ready to confront not just the enemy, but also the darkness lurking within himself? The stakes felt impossibly high, and for the first time, he questioned if he would emerge whole or changed irrevocably. He spotted Morris at the far end of the bar, surrounded by unflinching loyalty. This was no time to hesitate. As he wove through the crowd, Ethan felt a surge of uncertainty. He wasn't just playing for Mia anymore, he was playing for himself too. Would his resolve be enough, or would this harrowing encounter unravel the very fabric of who he believed himself to be? The answers lay just ahead, waiting for confrontation. Ethan's heart pounded as he navigated through the dimly lit pub, the laughter and chatter fading into a dull roar around him. Each step felt heavier than the last, a burden he had chosen to carry. He could see Morris's silhouette, a figure both familiar and foreign, surrounded by a circle of loyal patrons who seemed to radiate menace. What thoughts churned within Morris's mind? Was he the disgraced partner ready to explode, or a calculated kingpin remaining all-seeing? An inner battle raged as he approached. Would he take the opportunity that presented itself? Would he chance his very being by facing this man? The tension escalated, his thoughts a chaotic blend of urgency and self-inquisition. If he faltered here, if he backed down, what would that imply, not just for Mia, but for him? Would he become yet another face haunting the corridors of his past, a mere observer in the realm of action? As he reached the counter, he mustered his resolve, fueled by a mix of desperation and a need for clarity. The bartender's gaze flicked toward him, questioning, "What'll it be?"
"Information," Ethan replied, voice steadier than he felt. "I need to talk to Morris." The bartender raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "You sure you want to do that?" Ethan didn't respond. His eyes locked on Morris, who now turned to face him, an enigmatic smile spreading across his face. The kind that promised so much, yet hinted at hidden dangers lurking beneath the surface. "Morris," Ethan called out, feigning confidence even as he felt his palms sweat against the coolness of the bar. "Can we talk?" The laughter hesitated for a moment, the energy in the room shifting. Morris's companions exchanged glances, sensing the gravity of the interruption. Morris raised a hand, silencing his loyal friends. He motioned for Ethan to step closer, and the crowd parted, creating a path thick with tension. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping into the eye of the storm. The air hung heavy with the scent of alcohol, sweat, and something darker. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken threats. "What's this about?" Morris leaned back, confidence radiating from him like a blanket. "It's about Mia," Ethan began, grounding himself in her name. "You know her father's organization is in turmoil. I need to understand what you're planning or what you know." Morris's face remained impassive, but his eyes flickered with intrigue and something more sinister. "You're a bold kid, but what makes you think this is your fight?" Ethan felt anger and fear collide within him, turning uncertainty into fiery resolve. "Because it matters. Because I can't just stand by while lives are tossed aside." The tension amplified, each second stretching painfully into the next. Would this giant of a man dismiss him, or recognize a spark of potential hidden in Ethan's plea? "Stand by," Morris echoed, a hint of amusement in his voice. "It appears you've stepped into dangerous waters, my friend. The question remains, what are you willing to sacrifice to save her?" Each word landed like a weight in Ethan's gut. His deepest fears streamed to the surface, those natural instincts of self-preservation granting him pause. What would it take to confront his own darkness, the shadows that danced along the fringes of his consciousness? Was he willing to wrestle with his values, to challenge the moral boundaries he had always upheld? "Everything," Ethan replied, surprising even himself with the strength in his voice. "I'll do what it takes." Morris regarded him with an intensity that felt almost predatory, assessing the layers beneath the bravado. Ethan realized that this was not just a negotiation, but a crucible of transformation. He needed to prove himself, not exclusively to Morris, but to himself, to find where his resilience truly lay. The murmurs from the crowd faded. Morris leaned in, whispering, a conspiratorial scheme mingling with a threat. "Then let's see how far you're willing to go. I could use someone with a burning desire for change." Ethan felt his heart race.
This was the confrontation he hadn't anticipated. He wasn't merely sparring with Morris. He was stepping into the fray of moral ambiguity that would test his very essence. What lay ahead was unknown, a perilous expedition into the underbelly of Mia's father's empire, a place where trust was a commodity more valuable than gold. As Morris turned back to his companions, Ethan's mind whirled with implications. The stakes had shifted dramatically, and with it came a revelation. He was no longer merely an ally. He had consented to become a player in a game far beyond what he had imagined. Surrounded by shadows that threatened to engulf him, determination surged within him. It was a balancing act between light and darkness. Would he emerge with newfound strength, or would the chaos redefine him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend? The moment paused in fragile expectancy, a precipice on which his fate hung. The true question persisted. In the hunt for Mia and the truth behind her father's empire, would Ethan find the clarity and purpose he sought? Or would he lose himself entirely in the process? Ethan stood frozen, the tension in the air feeling almost tangible as the words exchanged with Morris settled into his consciousness. He was no longer merely an observer. He was an unwitting participant in a game dictated by power, deception, and survival. His newfound role struck him as a blend of terrifying and exhilarating. Yet, as the fear of failure gnawed at his insides, Ethan couldn't shake the realization that this was precisely the challenge he craved. "Let's see how far you're willing to go," Morris had said, his words twisting into a mantra that stirred a strange desire within Ethan. He imagined every possible route he could take to confront the darkness ahead. With each choice, he understood he would also be shaping his own identity in unforeseen ways. As he turned to leave the dimly lit pub, his heart thumped wildly, bolstered by adrenaline, yet weighed by the enormity of his decision. There was tangible energy buzzing in the air, a call to action that pushed him beyond the confines of his previous life. He recalled the moments before when he had felt lost, drifting through his days without direction. Now, however, the urgency spurred him forward, hijacking his attention from self-doubt to the stark reality that Mia might need him. Morris's eyes followed him as he moved outside, the air chilly against his skin,
grounding him in the here and now. But as he walked, he couldn't escape the nagging thought, what would he confront within mafioso territory? Could he navigate the web of players without becoming entangled in their schemes? Just the prospect of it set his pulse racing. Days on edge transformed into a plan. He would have to keep a low profile, observe, gather information, and build alliances. The underbelly of the criminal world was rife with risks and hidden truths.
Ethan had always thought of himself as a pacifist, someone who resolved conflicts with words rather than violence. But now he felt a dawning realization. Perhaps strength was not merely about muscles, but about resilience and cunning. He started by reaching out to his contacts. There was Sarah, a friend who had a knack for research and an affinity for knowing the ins and outs of the city's landscape. Tapping her ingenuity would be essential. He also considered his old mentor from community college, a retired detective with stories steeped in the realities of crime and justice. Was it time to seek counsel from someone who had danced with the shadows? Each connection he made was a thread weaving together a larger tapestry of insight, reformation, and potential. Yet, underlining every encounter loomed the specter of Morris's challenge. What was he willing to sacrifice? Building this network demanded a slice of his privacy, yet he recognized it was a necessary exchange to leverage their skills against the labyrinthine dangers ahead. As the days unfolded, Ethan felt a burgeoning sense of power from the knowledge he accumulated. But with each opportunity to uncover truths came the risk of exposing his own vulnerabilities. He thought about Mia and how desperately he wanted to protect her. But how much of himself would he have to give away to do it? Revealing yourself in a world of duplicity could lead to exposure, or worse, betrayal. One evening, while reviewing notes and mental maps sprawled across his dimly lit kitchen table, Ethan sensed something shift within him. A flicker of clarity ignited, a vision not just to save Mia, but to redefine himself against the backdrop of chaos. No longer was he just the invisible student. He was fast becoming a player, a figure of hope sculpting himself in the crucible of hardship. But the world of the unseen always bore surprises, wouldn't it? Just as he sat back to digest his progress, his phone buzzed insistently on the table, a name flashing on screen that sent jolts through his system. Morris. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th, came the cold command, devoid of pleasantries. "We need to talk." Ethan's heart raced again, this time with uncertainty. What new challenge awaited him? What confrontation would plunge him deeper into this murky landscape? As he felt the weight of choices pressing down on him, he took a deep breath, knowing with clarity that this was a defining crossroads. The true test of his resolve was imminent, and with it, he could either crumble or rise to embrace the journey ahead. What path lay beyond that warehouse door? Would he find within himself the strength needed to take a stand, or would he discover new horrors lurking in the shadows? Ethan stood in front of the warehouse. The peeling paint on the walls reflected the weariness settling in his bones. The flickering light overhead cast elongated shadows that danced mockingly, each one a reminder of the precarious balance he now navigated.
This was the kind of place where deals went down and lives were altered in an instant. He felt sweat bead on his brow, a mix of fear and determination that churned in his stomach. As he pushed through the heavy metal door, the creak echoed ominously, amplifying the tension in his chest. The interior scent entwined with the unshakable atmosphere of danger. Was this where he would truly begin to carve out his new identity, or would it mark the end of his quest before it even began? "Morris?" he called into the cavernous space, his voice wavering slightly. Silence answered him, stale and oppressive. He took a cautious step forward, his pulse racing as he waited for a figure to emerge from the shadows. Moments stretched into an eternity until Morris finally stepped from an alcove, his presence commanding. The Mafia boss's eyes, shrewd and calculating, were fixed sharply on Ethan, making his heart race with a mix of fear and adrenaline. There was no small talk, no easing into the conversation. Morris cut to the chase. "Do you understand the stakes, Ethan? This isn't just a game," he said, his tone laced with both challenge and urgency.
If you're going to survive here, you need to be willing to make tough choices. A lump formed in Ethan's throat. He had thought he was prepared, but the reality of Morris's words gripped him like icy fingers around his spine. He had spent days strategizing, forging connections, accumulating knowledge, but the cold reality was becoming tangible. This was no mere research project, it was survival, and he was stepping into a world that demanded far more than he originally anticipated. "What do you want me to do?" Ethan asked, forcing steadiness into his voice, though doubt simmered just below the surface. Morris stepped closer, the clipped air between them crackling with tension. "We have a situation involving Mia. She's been seen with someone who has ties to our enemies. You need to find her, Ethan. But remember, you'll have to make sacrifices. Your connections, your innocence, everything is on the table." The profound weight of those words threatened to crush him. He had been willing to take risks, but now he realized the magnitude of the choices he faced. Mia's safety was his top priority, yet Morris's nonchalant disregard for his tangential stake in this game shook Ethan deeply. "What exactly do you suggest?" he replied, barely hiding the tremor of vulnerability in his voice. Morris smirked, an unsettling glint in his eyes. "Begin where it often ends, at the bridges between factions. They won't give you information willingly, so you will have to work for it. Use your friends, the ones you've established. Rope them in, manipulate them if you must. This is about getting Mia back and asserting your place in a world where weakness is punished." Ethan's thoughts spiraled.
Manipulation? He had never considered using others as pawns. The ethics of it bore down heavily on him, yet Morris represented a path toward action. Every fiber of his being screamed against deceit, yet another part, a darker urge, sparked within him, urging him to adapt, to morph into something he had never thought he could be. "Do I look like the person who wants to hurt others?" he shot back, his words laced with a newfound resolve, though he could feel the doubt creeping in still. "No," Morris replied smoothly, "but this isn't about brute strength, it's about cunning. You either rise or you're left behind." As Ethan considered the implications, he felt a twinge of anger mingling with his growing determination. He wanted to protect Mia, but was this the price he had to pay? What would be lost in the chase to reclaim what was rightfully his? With a final glance at Morris, he left the warehouse, the night air hitting him like a wave. There had to be a way to accomplish his goals without losing himself in the cesspool of manipulation, but now he was entangled, caught between who he was and the monster he might become. The road ahead was daunting. As Ethan moved through the streets, he questioned how far he was willing to extend his morality for the sake of love and loyalty. What hidden truths would he unearth along the way, and would he still be able to recognize himself when it all unraveled? And as he stumbled upon the first lead to Mia's whereabouts, he couldn't help but wonder what obstacles lay ahead, and how would they change him forever? Ethan tightened his grip around the cold metal of the street lamp pole, its rough surface grounding him amid the storm of his thoughts. He had a list of names in mind, contacts forged from the edges of his ordinary life, but now they felt like a betrayal waiting to happen. How could he plunge into manipulation when his heart still clung to ideals? Morris's words echoed in his mind. There was no safe landing in this world of chaos. With every step forward, he questioned himself anew. What did it mean to protect Mia at any cost? The mere thought of her trapped, frightened, propelled him forward. However, it came at the steep price of loyalty to those who had once stood by him. The moral fabric of his life began to fray, and uncertainty loomed large over him. He made his way to Tony's bar, a dimly lit establishment with the air of familial warmth masking the simmering tensions beneath. This was a place where he would usually hang out, sharing laughter and stories with friends, but tonight it felt like a pit stop on a road to darkness. "Ethan, you good, man?" Tony greeted him, wiping down the bar as Ethan slid onto a stool, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him like the sagging rafters above. "Tony, I need information, a favor," he replied, surprised at how firm his voice sounded despite the turmoil within. Raising an eyebrow, Tony leaned in. "You's not usually one to ask for help so direct."
"What's going on?" Ethan hesitated, the dilemma of trust clawing at him. To unveil his predicament meant risking not just their friendship but his very soul. Tony's eyes flickered with concern but also curiosity. "The girl with the mob ties? You best be watching yourself. Those cats don't play games. And why should I help you?" In that moment, Ethan was met with a truth he had half expected. He stood on the precipice of leveraging affection for information. "I'll owe you one, Tony. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Tony's features. He leaned back, studying him. "Life or death, huh? You're prepared for whatever comes with this?" Ethan swallowed hard, grasping the weight of his words. "I have to be. This isn't just about me anymore." Tony finally nodded, turning to pour a drink. "All right, I might know something. There's a guy named Vico who's been buzzing around. He's fast on the street. Might know who Mia's been hanging with. But remember, Ethan, this ain't a game. You start poking the dragon, it might burn you." Burn. The word resonated painfully within him, a stark reminder that there was no turning back. As he confirmed his decision, the darkness of manipulation loomed ahead, and each answer was going to bend him further from who he had been. He scribbled down Vico's address, the ink sliding across the paper like his morality slipping away. Ethan lingered for just a moment, those last moments of lightness disappearing before his eyes. The quiet comfort of camaraderie dimmed. The reality of what was to come settled heavily in his gut. "Thanks, Tony." As he shoved the crumpled paper into his pocket, the thought bloomed. He was actively forging a path of deceit. He had adjusted his perspectives, crafted a new identity, but what if this new path meant becoming a person he could never reconcile with? Each step away from the bar felt heavier than the last, guilt clinging to him like a shadow. He questioned himself deeply. Was he still the Ethan who sought justice and love, or had he begun to embrace the darker allure of power and manipulation? With a fierce pulse of determination, he knew he had to confront Vico and uncover the truth, no matter where it led him. What Ethan didn't realize, as he delved deeper into this dangerous game, was that this first encounter could reveal not just Mia's whereabouts, but also expose unseen fractures in his own character. Arriving at the rundown warehouse indicated on the note, Ethan stood at the threshold, heart pounding in trepidation and anticipation. He would soon come face to face with Vico, but would he find the answers he sought, or something far more unsettling waiting for him in the shadows? Ethan's breath caught as he took a step towards the entrance of the warehouse.
The peeling paint and dimly lit windows were a far cry from the vibrant life he once knew, a reminder that he was wading into deep waters. Shadows shifted in the corners of his vision, stirring paranoia. He couldn't trust anything but his own resolve now. As he pushed the heavy door open, a squeak echoed like an alarm, piercing the silence within. The air was thick, suffocating with the scent of decay and neglect. He scanned the dimly lit room, searching for signs of life. Seconds stretched into eternity, each heartbeat a reminder of the risks he had taken. Vico was supposed to have answers, but what price lay for the information he sought? Ethan's mind raced. Would the cost be more than he could afford? Would it demand a part of him he wasn't willing to give? Miles of decisions loomed over him, a bridge between the man he was and the nameless figure he risked becoming. He pushed such thoughts aside, adjusting his focus to the task at hand. A figure emerged from the shadows, sliding out from behind a rusted steel column. Vico, with slick hair and a cocky smirk, assessed Ethan, an air of confidence radiating off him. "You got some nerve coming here, kid," he said, crossing his arms. "Most folks wouldn't tread these waters unless they were looking for trouble or had backup." "I'm only here for information about Mia," Ethan stated, trying to project calm certainty despite the tumult inside. "I need to know who she's been with." Vico's laughter taunted, a sound that made the hairs on the back of Ethan's neck bristle. "You think you can just waltz in here and outsmart me? Life's not a movie hero. You don't just get to play the knight in shining armor without the shadows touching you. You're in my world now." Panic rose in Ethan's chest, and he fought against it. This was the moment, the confrontation that mattered most. "If you know where she is, just tell me. Whatever it costs, I'll pay. Money, favors, anything. Just don't keep me in the dark." Vico stepped closer, eyes narrowing in appraisal. "You're desperate. I can smell it. But desperation makes you weak, Ethan. You're about to step into a game you can't afford to lose. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Sweat dripped down Ethan's brow, stinging as he swallowed his pride. "I won't back down. She's in danger, and I know people who won't stop until they get what they want. So if you've got intel,
Share it. A flicker of respect crossed Vico's face. All right, kid. This game requires one thing from you. Sacrifice. Mia's beyond your reach unless you're willing to play by the rules. Her connections run deep, and the ones who've got her won't just let her go. You could walk away from this clean, or you could embrace the monster. Up to you. Ethan's heart thudded with the weight of Vico's words. He felt the pressure coil around him, squeezing out the last remnants of his old self. Embrace the monster. He recoiled at the thought, fighting to cling to the flickers of integrity left within him.
But Vico was right about one thing. He was desperate. "What do I need to do?" he asked, voice steadying despite the chaos raging inside. Vico grinned, revealing a gap between his teeth. "First, you have to prove you can take a hit. Meet me here tomorrow night, and be prepared for a test. I'll give you a glimpse of where she's at, but if you can't handle it..." Ethan's resolve hardened. He wasn't going to falter now. "I'm not afraid." Good, because fear is the first thing to kill you in this business. With that cryptic validation, it dawned on Ethan. This could be more than just a test of will to find Mia. It was also a test of who he might become in the process. As he exited the warehouse, a surge of adrenaline coursed through him. The fight wasn't just for Mia. It was for his identity. Each step crunched on the gravel beneath him as he wrestled with the truths he'd unearthed. There were lines he hadn't yet crossed, and the blurred edges of his morality were gaping wide. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow night loomed ahead, a fork in the road. Would he step over the edge, or find a way to protect what remained of his humanity? The chill in the air bit at his skin, reminding him he was now chasing something greater than safety. He was chasing his very soul. The moment had come, and he would either rise from the ashes or get consumed by the flames. Outside, the world moved on, blissfully ignorant of his own turmoil. What awaited him with Eco was shrouded in uncertainty. But one thing was clear. It was time to redefine who Ethan truly was, or be lost forever in the shadows of his choices. Ethan barely slept that night, his mind racing with the weight of his impending confrontation. Each tick of the clock seemed to punctuate the anxiety coursing through his veins. How did he even begin to prepare for a test designed not just to challenge him physically, but to confront everything he thought he knew about himself? The edges of his old life blurred with the dark promise of a new one that loomed ahead, filled with roguish figures and pragmatic decisions he had once shunned. He awoke before dawn, sunlight clawing through the curtains like a persistent intruder. He pushed the covers aside, his heart pounding. There was no point in postponing the inevitable. He needed to devise a strategy. What did taking a hit really mean? He flipped through the disorganized thoughts in his mind, allowing them to coalesce into a plan. Ethan grabbed a worn notebook and began jotting down everything he knew about Vico, the gang connections he'd learned from Mia, any weapons he could manage. Would a show of strength persuade Vico, or was it simply a step towards losing himself completely? The gravity of the choices ahead anchored him, forcing him to confront the only question that truly mattered: what remained of his humanity if he chose to enter this underworld? Hours dragged painfully slow, until the sun dipped low, and shadows began to swallow the streets.
He dressed in his most durable clothing, a subconscious armor against the night's uncertainties. There was a fierceness burning inside him, fed by each choice he had made, to follow a crooked path if it meant saving Mia. The heroic image he had longed for no longer felt appealing. This was survival, pure and simple. As he walked towards the warehouse, Ethan's mind began to settle. A quiet determination enveloped him. He'd be damned if he would allow fear to dictate his actions tonight. With every step, he confirmed his resolve. He would undergo Vico's test, not just for Mia, but to force himself to confront whatever shadows beckoned within. He reached the warehouse. The atmosphere felt thick and electrifying, as though the very walls were bracing for what was about to come. Vico was already there, leaning against the cold metal of a shipping container, flanked by a couple of his associates, all visibly assessing Ethan as though he were prey. "Glad to see you made it," Vico said, smirking. "I wasn't sure you'd show. Tonight, things get real." "We don't have time for games, Vico. Just tell me what I need to do," Ethan replied, his voice steady. The mere act of speaking those words seemed to unlock both his apprehension and an unexpected courage. Vico gestured towards a makeshift ring, marked with scuffed chalk on the grime-coated ground. "This is simple. You're going to take a few hits. Each one gets you closer to seeing this situation for what it is. Ready or not, kid, welcome to the deep end. Ethan's heart hammered. The idea of facing physical pain was understandable. He could manage that. But to engage in a display of vulnerability in front of Vico and his men, that was a different beast. To wrestle with the deeper barbs of emotional and moral conflict, that felt far scarier. Vico's keen gaze watched him, a predator anticipating how its prey might react. You can back out. You don't have to prove anything to me. But those words triggered a defiance within Ethan that echoed louder than any fear. I'm not backing down, he stated plainly, then stepped into the ring. This wasn't just about a test. It was about erecting the boundaries of his identity, a declaration that he would confront whatever horrors lay ahead. With Vico's nod, the first blow came, a punch aimed squarely at his midsection. The impact knocked the breath out of him, but as he doubled over, pain pulsed through him, igniting a flicker of resolve. This, he thought, as discomfort became familiar, was who he was becoming. His ability to absorb blows, both physical and emotional, defined his journey now. The crowd of Vico's associates leaned closer, fascinated by the spectacle. With each punch that landed, each surge of adrenaline, Ethan felt partnered with something primal. He was discovering a painful strength he never knew existed within him. With every hit, developments unleashed secrets not only about Vico's character, but about Ethan's determination.
With the taste of grit in his mouth, he found himself standing taller. The test would not just reveal his capabilities, it was reshaping the very core of who he was. And then, as he prepared himself for another blow, a surprising shift in the dynamics became apparent. There was a tension in the air, a realization that tonight was the first step towards a reckoning beyond just himself. What if he could turn this test into something formidable? What if it bridged a gap between threats and awareness, between survival and power? A deeper conundrum whispered to him like a distant echo. How fierce would he need to be to save Mia, and what would he risk in the process? With the next punch barreling toward him, Ethan clenched his jaw. His identity was being forged in pain, and as the realization hit, the moment of truth loomed nearer. Would he merely endure, or would he rise a different man? The fight had only just begun. Ethan stood in the warehouse, breaths coming heavy as the blow left him gasping. Each hit redefined his understanding of pain, his resilience growing alongside the bruises forming on his skin. But with each pulse of hurt, something deeper welled within him, an awakening. When he first stepped into this chaotic underworld, he had envisioned it as merely a rescue operation for Mia. Yet the realization struck him like a wake-up call. This journey was equally about reclaiming the very essence of who he was. He could feel the boundaries of his previous life dissolving, yielding to a new, primal version of himself, forged through conflict. As Vico unleashed the next punch, Ethan dodged instinctively, his body reacting to danger with newfound agility. It was as if all the doubts and fears, the shadows of his past, were now morphing into an energy that propelled him forward. He couldn't allow Mia's fate to entangle him further in the clutches of fear, nor could he lose sight of the man he had been striving to become. "Get up," Vico taunted. "Show me you're not just another wannabe." His words sliced through the haze of pain, igniting a fierce resolve within Ethan. With a guttural roar, Ethan stood, narrowed his gaze, and took a step into the well-lit circle. "I'm not just another wannabe. I am here for Mia, and I'll do whatever it takes." The air grew tense. Vico's expression shifted, intrigued. Ethan felt courage swelling within him as he embraced the pangs of hurt with every powerful punch he absorbed. The gauntlet was proving to be a transformation, not just physically, but mentally as well. A shift emerged within the group of Vico's associates as they watched him push through the pain, admiration igniting against the backdrop of what should have been mockery. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel like a pawn. He was becoming an agent of his own narrative, orchestrating his evolution in an environment always rooted in chaos. After what felt like an eternity, Vico finally stepped back, observing him with an appraising gaze. "All right, kid.
You've got guts, but guts alone won't cut it in this line of work. Panting and sore, Ethan glared back, wiping the sweat from his brow. I'm not here for accolades. I want information about Mia. You promised me a glimpse at the truth. With a sidelong glance at his associates, Vico leaned back against the wall, assessing the scope of Ethan's ambition. Guts are one thing. Now let's see if you can play the game. Knowledge isn't just handed out. You have to make deals, assert your power, and let others know you are not to be trifled with. His words struck hard, and Ethan realized that while he sought to save Mia, he was also wrestling with a very personal rebirth. What do I need to do? He demanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. There was no turning back now. He was tethered to this path. Infiltrate. Vico leaned closer, his tone shifted to conspiratorial. You'll have to get into the inner sanctum of the organization holding Mia, prove you can be an asset, leverage your connections, offer something valuable. At that moment, Ethan understood. This was the crucible of his transformation. He was no longer the shadowy student, the overwhelmed kid from a humble diner. He was in the throes of crafting a new identity. Suddenly, the echoes of his father's failures loomed large. The man who had wandered into dangerous circles without a clear sense of self was no longer his only model for existence. I can do that, Ethan replied, a steadiness unfurling within him. Just tell me where to start. Meet me tomorrow night, Vico instructed, his confidence unwavering. I'll introduce you to the players, and you'll need to be sharp. Don't let them see weakness. Gather intel, and remember, everyone you trust can become your greatest threat. Loyalty here is a fleeting concept. As Vico stepped back into the shadows of the warehouse, Ethan's heart pounded with clarity. Each lesson learned, each bruise sustained had cultivated a deeper understanding of the game he was entangled in. He walked through the streets with a new sense of purpose. Tomorrow marked not just the next step in his search for Mia, but it heralded a pivotal shift in who he would ultimately become. The choices before him were stark. Saccharine promises belonged in fairy tales. The world he inhabited was raw, and for the first time in a very long time, he didn't just feel alive, he felt empowered. Ethan was determined to navigate the tangle of loyalty, manipulation, and sacrifice in this dangerous new dimension. He had taken the first steps into a darker purpose, and while uncertainty lingered, it didn't scare him. Today marked an irreversible change. He was no longer a fearful pawn, but a resilient player ready to take charge of this game. His victory wouldn't just be saving Mia, it would also be redefining himself into someone worthy of the sacrifice, someone who could lay claim to the life he dreamt of, a life filled with purpose, strength, and resolve.
Leaving the twisted alleys behind, he embraced the shadows, ready to confront the oncoming storm with an unwavering heart. Now he needed to act. The stakes were high and the clock was ticking. But Ethan was prepared to shape his fate, starting now. And as he turned the corner, fueled by conviction, he understood he wouldn't sacrifice his individuality on the altar of ambition. He would succeed, and succeed on his own terms. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really helps. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.